Moving on to item 8, community comments. We have 2 community members who requested to speak this evening. Our numbering is very interesting. Pete Kavanaugh.
Good evening. My name is Pete Kavanaugh, and I live at Greenwood Court. Tonight I want to speak about my concerns about bullying, harassing, and discriminatory actions by the superintendent that targeted me and my wife on election day as we stood and walked on North Grove Street. We were kicked off the public sidewalk outside the 100-foot perimeter, which is not district property and not under the control of the superintendent. We sent the SOR out to tell us that the district, meaning the superintendent, did not want us there. I do not blame the SOR. He was doing his job. And I obliged because it was a reasonable request, even though it was not awful. We both provided a report to the board on May 26th. This afternoon, my wife received an insignificant response, hand delivered. I received nothing. Both the code of conduct and the policy on harassment and discrimination are board policies listed in your policy manual under public order on school property. Section 15 of your 2012 Code of Conduct says restrictions on public conduct on school property and at school functions contained in this code are not intended to limit the freedom of speech or peaceful assembly. Yet, that's exactly what the superintendent did on May 17th. He limited our constitutional and civil rights. He treated us very different from the group of young people who gathered on the same day on school property. We were not on school property, on a public sidewalk. They blocked the sidewalk. We did not block the sidewalk and infringed on the 100-yard marker or 100-foot marker. These young people carried campaigns for the Blower team, while my wife wore a campaign button and I wore a campaign shirt for the Boner team. Was this age discrimination? Was the superintendent, was it our age the superintendent didn't like, or was it the candidate we support? This should be investigated by the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to just comment quickly to say that I understand that your comments were very specific, and I would have been requesting you not to speak if I had asked you to follow our rule where we do not speak about specific individuals. But I thank you for your comments and your feedback.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Kaltman?
I want to thank Mr. Paul Flowers, Joe Cassidy, Judith Mellis, Terry O'Willer, Jessica Arbers, Brian Russ, Jacqueline Walker, Kimberly Daniel, and Mr. Daniel Brunson for.
Could you please sit down, sir?
Okay.
Thank you.
For amicably, I couldn't read, sorry.
That's okay. We're just going to go back to the part where we're not speaking about individuals specifically, but carry on. It's a free-for-all today.
Okay, do I still have 3 minutes?
Go for it.
Okay. I want to thank you all for the amicable receipt and successful service of petition for corrective action served by some very brave community members. It's very hard to participate nowadays alone, much less identify and call out some serious and merited ethical discrepancies that has transpired over this election. I want to thank those family members for doing what they're doing. It's very brave and courageous to stand up against the machine, I'll call it, because they have the power to control the narrative that the general public sees. And for them to actually address it, it takes a lot of courage and bravery to do such a thing, to expose these things so that they get corrected. So I know that there's not, you don't want to go into details, and I'm not going to go into details, but I want to thank you for the successful service of all those papers and petitions. And hopefully the community will find out so that it doesn't happen again. And for the most important thing, the students that aren't here, hopefully some of the teachers and parents will relay the message. Kudos to them. I mean, top 10, I was never top 10. But if you persevere and you're dedicated, I just got my bachelor's degree with a 3.63 and English, and I hope every single one of them pursue whatever it is they're gonna do. And don't take as long as I did to do it. Thank you, Board.
Thank you, Mr. Calvin. Anyone else?
Thank you, officer.
Moving on. Oh, thank you very much. Yes, thank you, Ms. Silva. For the reminder, we received, looks like 4 emails, yes. One from Mrs. Kavanaugh regarding clarification of misinformation related to lawsuits and commissioner's appeal. 2 emails from Mrs. Skype on the do no harm as related to emergency regulations and regents exams, and an email from the Greater East Aurora Chamber of Commerce regarding the Chamber's Choice Awards honoring the 40 students from East Aurora, Holland, Iroquois, plus the Ormsby Center. Did you all receive those 4 emails?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the reminder. Moving on to item 9, reports and discussion items. Item A, Ms. George, that is you. We are up for financial reports.
Thank you. I thought I'd update the board on a few things other than just the financial statements. I wanted to update you on the test to stay funding from Erie County. We did receive $150 to offset the $650 that it cost us to implement the test to stay program. We're working with FEMA. I want to give a big shout out to my assistant Jennifer and to Mr. Moore, my intern, who have been helping go through this process. It's quite a process with the change of the federal government presidency. The rules changed halfway through and they continue to change. We have submitted a $140,000 claim for the transportation piece of the delivery of the meals. That's under review still. The PPE project is ready to be submitted. Thank you, Mr. Moore. This took a lot of work to gather all the information. That's about $112,000. The next project we'll work on is the plexiglass submission, which will be about $97,000. Another testing project, that was when we were testing people to see if they had COVID, a $9,000 project. A buildings and grounds project for overtime, approximately $12,000. And the last one we'll do are the filters and purifiers, which will be a $51,000 project. So.
Could we have that all in a quick write-up when that
Sure.
works? Thank
Sure.
you very much
Well,
for giving it.
Sure, as I'll keep,
Running tally?
Yep.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
The funds run through the general fund, or is this a special aid?
No, this is FEMA reimbursement for all the COVID expenses that we incurred unexpectedly that weren't budgeted for.
So we're going to
It'll
General
come
fund
back
revenue,
into the
like-
general fund eventually.
like recovered prior year expenses, something like that. That'd be a nice way to follow it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the questions, Flowers. Any other questions on that from the board?
And then I have the reports, the financial reports. As of the end of April, we had approximately $11.8 million in the bank, which ties to our cash flow statement. We'd expended approximately 73% of our budget and received about 91% of our revenues. I always update you on the cafeteria fund. As of the end of April, we were showing about a $35,000 profit. In the federal fund, as of the end of April, we have received $1.1 million and expended almost $1.4 million. Our treasurer is in the process of doing the drawdowns, the differential. And that's all I have. Are there any questions?
We have to bridge.
Oh, the bridge.
Oh, thank you.
So what you're going to see here is this is the May grid. We were supposed to do this last month and then it got busy because it was election day and all the rest of that stuff. So these numbers are current as of that May 17th, 19th day. We just didn't get to the report. And so I'll just walk you through. There's not a ton of changes. You're going to see salaries kind of come and go. We did wind up under budget on salaries by about $25,000. Again, some of that is as we bring in new folks, we're putting them into grants and the rest. We are not putting any benefits into grants. Also, we have been kind of one of our quote unquote windfall sources has been Joanne's managing of the healthcare. I think we've kind of milked that cow out. So we've kind of hit where we're going to go on that. The rest of the numbers you'll see kind of continue where they are. In terms of what we can control, in terms of expenditures, we're about $343,000 under budget. Not bad for a $40 million budget. In terms of revenue, you'll see that there's a number, the numbers continue to carry over, but they remain very similar. I'll remind you the $150,000 was in unexpected state aid. The big one is the $500,000 in unexpected Erie County sales tax, which is tied directly to the gas tax, which is now capped, and it also is dependent on gas prices. So hopefully, personally, that'll go down, but it also is going to be significant. So each time I do this budget, we show, or this grid at the end of the year, I kind of show that we're good. But I also warn you each time, we have found a different hat to pull a rabbit out of each time, and it's getting harder and harder to do that. These numbers are pretty conservative numbers. You're going to see that between the 343 to the good in expenditures and the 539 to the good in terms of revenue, we're about 882 to the good overall. But remember, 481 of that is already spoken for in next, I'm sorry. No, not 881, that's the COVID. What's the 418, sorry, 418 of that 882, sorry, is already spoken for. And without that unexpected state aid or the unexpected gas tax, that would be an issue. However, some of that is directly tied to us having to spend more money as well. So it's not one or the other, but we're really sharpening this point. We're not overspending, we're not overtaxing, but we are playing with razor thin margins in a $40 million budget. But good news is we are projected to end the year slightly to the good, but not exorbitantly. This is the last report. Again, remember, these are as of May's numbers. We don't anticipate any major changes, but at this point, we shut the grid down so that the auditors can do their work. You'll get that June column filled in once the audit report comes out, but you'll also get the next grid starting in August, September, October. We're well on to our way of hiring. We've hired 9 folks, offered you hire them over the last 2-3 days, and that's moving along. So it is shaping up, but we continue to play with personally big numbers, but organizationally razor thin numbers, and we just need to be aware of that. Okay.
Any questions?
Oh, and then I'll just do COVID funds received and spent because I know that's always an issue. You're going to see that we're slightly overspent, but that's by design because we spend most of the COVID money during the school year, but the COVID money comes in on a 12-month cycle. So we're not worried that we are $16,000 overspent. We're expecting to get our next shipment in of money over the summer, and it'll all work out. It's the nature of how we spend money versus how they reimburse money. So don't panic that that's an overspend. It's just a timing thing. Okay.
Questions? Do you want another copy of those? On this?
Do I have another copy of it?
Yeah, there's a couple of here.
Okay, thank you. 1, 2, 3.
Dan, watch those wires. And I can always email it to all of you as well, too, or whatever.
Thank you, Mr. Ready. Thank you, Ms. George. Moving on to item B, the district technology plan.
Thank you.
Madonna?
I'm going to keep this much shorter than the almost 100-page document that you got there.
We're all a little more relaxed now.
Yeah. So every 3 years, New York State asks every school district to put together a technology plan that's going to cover your instructional objectives, how you're going to finance all of these purchases and integrations, and also ways to evaluate it. This is a daunting project that takes collaboration from everyone here plus everyone out there, and coming here at the beginning of February is very short window to do that. So I appreciate everyone's help to get the information to me and the ability to write it, and then everyone can help to review it and finalize it to the point it came to. We got great news yesterday, New York State accepted it, so we have an approved New York State plan as far as the state's concerned, and we'd like to ask your approval as well as this. So, really quickly, the major priorities of this plan, based on surveys and input from everyone involved, and some of what we need to be true to is it's really important that we get our students prepared for college career and their 21st century leadership roles they're going to have. High-speed broadband for all of our students, hopefully in their homes as well as here at schools, so they can function in a connected world where the technology is not inhibiting their learning. Wireless devices for every student, staff member, access to digital resources and assistive technologies, evolution of our curriculum to incorporate more programming, more STEAM, blended learning, and digital citizenship. Realization of funding to support this technology. We don't want to cliff for any of our kids either. Clear vision for technology integration and effective training so our staff can implement all of this. So what our planning process included was technology committees at all of our building levels, administrative meetings, we talked about it there as well. District technology committee met time to finalize the goals based on all the input. And we also had a number of surveys go out to our instructional staff, our students, and our community. Using that information, we put together objectives that include curriculum instruction, infrastructure, hardware, and software, a goal about data privacy and security, one about communication, and one about access. They're all listed with a whole lot of detail in there, so I'm not gonna bore you. But in order to be effective, we've set some parameters to make sure that we meet this goal to provide students with the ability to become technologically literate citizens. We're gonna make sure that we evaluate resource usage so that we're making sure to spend the money on the ones that they need and are most effective. Create a master list of resources and ensure our pre-K and K students have equal access. Hopefully we get a second technology coach to help us integrate. We have New York State digital literacy standards that were just adopted during COVID. They helped write them. And we need to ensure that those get added into the content and curriculum of K-12 and obviously ongoing professional development. On the infrastructure, hardware, and software goal, our department committee said our goal was to provide and maintain technical infrastructure necessary to support all learning environments and provide equitable opportunities for our learners. In this step, in this goal, our intent is to offer and evaluate new emerging technologies, make sure that we have appropriate funding, adopt our technology insurance plans, hopefully so we can have cyber insurance to cover us in case of an incident. We need a physical inventory audit every 5 years. We intend with Doug's help to update our VoIP and camera systems. We'd like to get all of our staff content to the cloud. We'd like to automate onboarding and offboarding with our staff and students. And we'd also like to get our core infrastructure into generator cover so we don't have an outage at any point. Data privacy and security. We intend to perform periodic phishing tests, cybersecurity training annually to our staff and our students, regular audits, ensuring our latch fee compliance is up to date, 5-year refresh plan on our infrastructure tools, all kinds of good stuff. And lastly, we've been working on this quite a bit, our NIST framework as a guiding force on the decision making. Collaboration and communication, we decided under this umbrella heading to use technology to improve administration, data management, and communication in the school system, as well as improve communication between the school system and community. We'd like to do this with our new website and app, which we're rolling out at the end of the month. Unifying our social media accounts, which has been done, but officially will roll out at the end of this month. Data encryption for all email and file shares, an AV extracurricular position, hopefully to help us with all of this new outreach digitally that we're offering now. High quality projectors in each auditorium, high quality live streaming equipment and service. We got a new camera, do you see it? So these clocks are going away, and it's actually working, but just in case it didn't go as expected tonight, we wanted to have backup. And digital access tools. Last one, access and opportunity. We want to make sure that everyone has equal access to everything. We're going to set up a 4-year device refresh policy for staff and students. Provide assistive technology resources so all students have an equitable opportunity. Data encryption for email and file shares. Student device agreement is going to help us to focus on accountability so the families realize that these devices are expensive and we need to take very good care of them. We are working and intend on September to be our kickoff for our in-house student technology repair team at the high school. We want to update and review policies, and we are also implementing a new managed print service for our printers and copiers. So in order to ensure that we're successful with all of this, we have a large team of technology specialists. This is their titles, and they all will help with every one of the goals I mentioned. And lastly, our monitoring and evaluation, how we can make sure that we're successful through all of these goals and all of these steps. We will have continued technology committee meetings at each of our buildings. Our administrative team will help us with this. We'll have annual reviews of our technology plan with our district technology committee to ensure the objectives are realistic and pursued moving forward. We have monitoring tools that we've purchased and will continue to utilize to ensure that all the devices are here, accounted for, inventoried, and working well as our tools are being used. And lastly, we're going to do our best to work with Jessica and the teachers to integrate the ISTE standards, the New York State digital literacy standards, and use our observations as a good gauge of how well things are going when we get to positive classes. So there's a 90-page document there. Here's a 5-minute overview. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. But it's a piece of a project, and luckily we only have to do it for
I had a question about letter D, communication and collaboration. It was on page 18. You had for number 9 and 10, create extracurricular position with stipend for auto.
provide an extracurricular position.
So is that, and then you just mentioned it again about in-house repair team. Is that something you're doing as a club?
Yeah, so it's going to be, and if you don't mind me jumping.
No, go for it.
Mr. Roberts and Mr. Moore have already been working with us that we're going to have an extracurricular position to manage the students. They're gonna work out of the tech office, which is expanding to allow us to have a hallway window to service the students who are having issues. They can get their loaners through us, first level tech support, create tickets. And that teacher is, or advisor is going to be helping the students learn how to take care of all of these things, setting them up for hopefully success to move on and maybe get a job in IT in some fashion. We are going to have the students take the opportunity to be Dell certified and Lenovo certified. We've been approved by both companies. Once they're trained and certified, we can actually do warranty repairs right in-house. So we've got some lofty goals to get it off the ground. We've already started at job applications this week. We've got our first meeting on Friday and Tuesday between the two buildings. 8th grade's still at the middle school, so we gotta split them up. But our intent and goal, if everything were to work out, is to have every period covered with 2 or 3 students. And we've got a whole bunch of online training, so when our staffer can't be there, there'll always be someone in our tech office, but if the direct advisor can't make it, they'll be able to help and ensure the students are progressing through their knowledge and gaining the skills to help us, because we could use it, but also empower them to, get a skill set that they can go off and say, hey, I know how to do this already.
I saw this when I was going through the page document. Absolutely amazing. That's one thing that I caught my eye. I don't know whose idea that was, but take it as your own. It was brilliant.
Well, very honestly, it's not mine, but we went to Alden with Blue Dog Manufacturing. I wasn't even started here yet, and I got to go and meet them. And Blue Dog Manufacturing was, no, not Blue Dog. What was it? Alden, the dogs. Bulldogs. I knew I was saying it wrong. I'm sorry. You corrected me. So it was so neat to see that, but then they also brought us upstairs to their Atlas student tech team. And they have a readily equipped student tech team where these kids, actually, we got to see them yesterday too at the conference at Buff State. These students are doing all the work. They manage themselves, and they have got the devices. No one's even watching them. There's an advisor, but these kids are just empowered, and I can't wait to see our students be able to do the same thing.
It's a great idea. Thank you.
Are they from every ability level?
So far we have mostly boys, so I'm gonna work on the girls a little bit more.
It's important.
Yes, but we have a range of 8th through 11th graders so far that we've heard from. We did a little more nudging today, like in person. Hey, join us. This is gonna be really cool. And so I think we'll have a very nice group, I hope. And it's hopefully also, we had asked the teachers, like, do you have any recommendations? Some of those kids that maybe aren't involved in something else or might like that opportunity to work on something independently and, complete the puzzles.
It's perfect for end of grade. That's awesome.
The fact that you've been here only since February and
You're rocking it. This is
Oh, well,
amazing.
thank you very much.
I mean,
Judy, to answer part of your question, Christy's been working her the tech office is right next to the 811 class in the middle school here.
Aren't they
And
dear?
I
Christy's,
just love
or Nina's students have been working with the tech department in preparing Chromebooks.
They
So,
were the cutest classroom. They did
yeah,
presentation.
so they are
Oh my
working
God,
with
I was in love with
you know,
them.
other
What a cool
all abilities and
opportunity,
things like that. all
Yeah, so
students,
they offered to help. I was like, yes.
so.
And they've been great so
Helpful
far.
in those kiddos, you know.
What's
Yeah.
up, Ms. Flowers, what do you have?
This may have been answered, I apologize.
No.
Now, this report is, well, first of all, it's comprehensive, it's an amazing report. If we're being graded, I only got through page 33, so I always get, I don't know if that's like a 1 or something.
I was writing it.
But, is this, I forgot, this is required from the state, this comprehensive, and it's an amazing report. And the only reason I brought it up, and I don't know if it's sidetracked, because I just feel like doing it, when I was on the campaign trail, there were a couple of items that were brought up several times, tax being one of them. But one of them was, why do you need so many administrators? And what I'd like to do is take these reports and stack them up, which probably reaches the ceiling, not this, everything we do here, you take the policy, the time-consuming process, and the energy, you want resources and time to go into the classroom with children, and this does, but it is amazing the amount of reports and the amount of responsibility the administrators have, and of course it filters down to the classroom. So when I see a report like this, I'm appreciative really of the time and effort of everyone. And then when you look through it and you see responsibility of the principals and the business administrator, so I mean, these things just keep getting added on and on and on. So when they ask me out in public, why do you know the administrator? You feel like saying, I don't know. I mean, because you couldn't even begin to answer that question. I'm off my soapbox, I apologize. That's how I feel about it.
Thank you, because I think we should all carry this with us, because it is so comprehensive and so impressive, and also it reflects all of the hours of work that went into the report, and then all of the hours of work that go into the things that are listed in the report. So I think that was a great point, Mr. Flowers.
Great.
This-
I can't
this
wait
is
to
one
meet with you
massive
all and
thing.
say, yeah, we checked this much off. So,
All the things checked off.
Amazing
I
job.
had one comment from as a representative of the policy committee. There are a lot of policies that are listed in here, and I would caution that we maybe list the policies, not include them, because like this is living and breathing, so are those policies that are currently under review. So they may not be the policies they are now later on this summer.
so maybe we'll just put the headings, the numbers and the names, and even if you'd like,
Yes.
we can hyperlink them to where they reside online.
That would be perfect, yes, and then that's even more alive. We may, the numbers may not even be the same until we've got it all cleaned up, so, thank you.
Oh, thanks, easy to fix.
Names, numbers, it's all under review right now, we're hard at work. Thank you. Other questions? All right. Thank you very much. I'm so excited about that one, I lost track of it. Item C, Mr. Russ and Ms. George, the update on the capital facilities project.
Yeah, so we had a number of facilities meetings to prepare for a project that we would like to present to the public at the beginning of December. That's our goal. And so we've made some really good progress, and we've shared that information with the board. I think people on the committee. Oh, that's a different draft. Yeah, so we share the information with the board, and so some of the members that are on the board sit on the committee, obviously, and so we're going to share that with you now. But we'll also open up to questions, and what we're hoping to do is really come to our decision by our last meeting in August, which will be around the 20th of August. We have to determine that. So we have a meeting in July. Probably going to need another meeting between now and the August meeting. So it could be a meeting in June, it could be a meeting in July, the beginning of August. But we're going to need another meeting just so that we have enough time to talk through all the elements and items that are going to be included in the project. So you can see you got this as a draft because it's a work in progress. We're getting closer, and we're really hoping to be able to identify the necessary things for this project. But we're also looking at the numbers. So what Nancy from our financial planners she's working with us to determine the size of the project. And then we've talked a little bit about what does it look like if there's no increase to the levy, and then maybe what does it look like if maybe there is some type of increase, but that's something that we'll talk about in future meetings, or maybe tonight if you choose to do so. But Terry's been kind of updating us, so you want to take us through the different
Sure.
parts of it?
Sure, so you all received the draft that, came to your emails.
That's what that is.
It doesn't have the numbers on it.
So I'll just go through some of these with you, so, and then you can ask any questions if you might have any. Starting with Judy needs one, please. Perfect, thank you. So starting with the first one, Parkdale Elementary, PA and clocks, the PA system. So a full replacement of the clock and PA system and the supplemental CO detection safety systems. The current ones are 30 years old, the current wires are 30 years old. And all rooms would end up having new clocks at the end of that addition. Security cameras, there is a grant that Mr. Wicks is trying to secure. So we're not really quite sure how much money we get from the grant yet and how many security cameras then that would cover. And then the mechanical and glycol. Our chiller, even though our Parkdale is not considered to be that old, it doesn't have the glycol. And Mr. Wicks, could you explain to the board exactly what you have to do every year? Because we don't have it in our system, we currently have water.
We do this with all three buildings.
All three,
is we drain all the coolant coils and have to put glycol in them a little bit so that they don't freeze. We do it with all rooftop units, all unit vents, throughout the district. And then we drain that out and refill them with water in the spring. And the problem with that is besides being labor intensive, is that, if we have in the summer, we can't cool. And if we have a very, an Indian summer or late or spring where we have a real warm spot and we have to cool again, we could have a problem if we were to start early or, end too late, if that makes any sense.
So does the glycol, does swapping the water for the glycol give you the opportunity to run the system when it's needed, not?
Correct. And it's also bad for the system when you drain it in the seasonally like that, excuse me, because air being on the pipes is a bad thing. And they don't even do it that much. These systems are usually created and designed with glycol. Ours was not.
Right.
It's sort of like winterizing your pool or a camper and then having to reopen it.
So as he said, that is something that all three buildings are listed on the potential scope. So that is Parkdale's.
Mr. Wicks, when you say it's labor intensive, I'm just curious, how long does it take? Is it a couple of days to do that, like in the spring and the fall,
stays-
or?
Yeah, it requires going to each unit vent in every rooftop unit, because the ones that are interior inside of like a mechanical room, like in our basement here, we don't have to do that with. But for anything that's gonna be exposed to direct elements, like unit vents are at Parkdale, for instance, because they have a vent that goes right in the wall. So if it's over a weekend or a non-occupied time, theoretically, we could have a cold wind, a west wind, east wind, whatever it may be. It could freeze if the hot water is not pumping, which does happen. And unoccupied, again, it just depends on the weather. If it was 35 degrees and it dropped down to 20 and you had a stiff wind, there could be the potential of them freezing up. And it's just a matter of hitting every single, I think there's 58 unit vents at Parkdale. And then I can't tell you how many rooftop units off the top of my head, but it's something we've done. The first year, excuse me, it was done by the contractor. And then after that, it is quite costly. I think like $20-something thousand maybe. So, we just do it in-house.
Other questions on the AC?
So keep in mind that those are the things that are needed at Parkdale, that we have right now.
They're not budgeted yet.
And, yeah, and then, if we go to the middle school, you have the fire alarm system, and recent code changes necessitate the reason why we need to replace this. So again, there's no choice. Toilet rooms, that is the second and third floor restrooms and the first floor, gang rooms. That means where it's not just a single bathroom.
Doesn't mean
It's
that-
multiple bathrooms.
Terrible phrase.
I did not, I'm reading that off here, I do not know who put gang.
That's what they're called. They're called.
It's just a,
That's what
it's
they're
a
called.
standard term for Main Street.
Fax room, and that is to do full renovation, and science room, AC, floor, ceiling, counters, cupboards, et cetera. So full renovation. And I think they had said that has not been done, and Mr. Brown was it 40 years?
I don't remember. The 19th,
Yes, I
Yes.
Definitely one that's been left.
Were you
Yes.
born?
Yeah.
Were you born?
And then again, the clock system, but this one at the middle school, this is only for the clocks, and it needs to be revised due to the PA system. Elevator renovation, it's the passenger one, it is not the freight elevator, that's just to modernize it. Again, glycol replacement. Second floor air conditioning, which we do not have. Library renovation, that's the full renovation with a $100,000 furniture allowance. And it says on here the historical restoration of the library space. The library has to be done. I mean, it is, the space is not conducive for what we need for a library / media center. So I mean, I heard some people say that we shouldn't worry about the historical plaster. The library needs, it's not the historical part that is the reason why we're doing the library. We're doing the library because the library needs to be done. It has not been done in how many years?
Could I ask that, not necessarily tonight, but at the next board meeting, we have a little, since this is a significant dollar figure, that we have a presentation on what is required of a current library and what we're aiming to do. I think there's going to be a significant amount of discussion about the ceiling, and as Ms. Zoller said, the focus is not the ceiling, but the price tag is going to necessitate conversation. And I want to make sure we're providing community members with a good picture of what we're aiming for there, why it's necessary to update the library, especially when we think about people who graduated from the school many years ago or went to school many years ago, and they think libraries are tables and books and we have those, what else could we possibly need? Let's please talk about what else we definitely need.
And even changing the name to a media center from the board library.
And also.
We just had an amazing technology presentation. Let's talk about how that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And breaking it down also where we have full renovation and historical restoration. So maybe you need to break down what's the full renovation, what's the cost of the historical renovation, so that people understand.
Yep.
Yeah.
What the different costs are.
And where
And
we
if
start
we would do it.
smashing walls and need to repair them anyway, right? There's always overlap.
First floor hall renovation, and that would also include exposing the arches, and that's the ceiling lights, flooring, locker painting, and other finish improvements. HVAC, first floor mechanical, roof replacement, there is roof replacement, there is a possibility, that was the 1997 roof. There is a possibility that we may be able to do something, it depends how the insulation in the roof is. And that's something that is still being determined.
Whether it has to be a tear off in a full replacement, or if the insulation is still good, if they can go over top of it with a different product.
So that's why a lot of the items that are on here, from a cost perspective, we don't have full numbers yet, because we don't really know yet exactly what needs to be done. And then we have security cameras. Again, we're not sure how much money we might get from the grant that Mr. Wicks has been looking into. And the West Gym renovations. And that would be limited, not what we originally had hoped to do. That would do the lights, the wall pads, scoreboards and some other requests.
Can I ask one question here? The elevator renovation, could you explain that one again and which elevator it is?
That is the passenger elevator.
Oh.
It is not the freight elevator. And it's just, Mr. Wicks, please jump in any time. It's just modernizing it. It's just making sure that everything is
Yes.
up to date.
I'll say that the parts for that elevator, like if it breaks, they're not available. So they're just gonna revamp it with like, let's say if it was a car, they're gonna put a motor and a computer in it that is serviceable. Right now, if it goes down, it's not really repairable. It could be, a major,
The pulley
Basic
system, that type of stuff, right?
what's that?
They're updating the pulley system, the things that,
It's hydraulic, but yeah, it's as a piston, but, yeah, they'll be redoing that stuff as well. The seal and there's actually, as high as it goes, there's a piston that goes down the opposite direction just as far. So like when it goes down, there's like a piston that goes that far in the ground and it'll push up 70 foot to raise the car. So, the seal for that would be replaced, but not the cylinder itself, because that would be, one of the
Not the car itself.
costs, yeah.
What's that?
Not the car itself, like the.
That's gonna stay?
No, it's
Oh, that's gonna go too?
No, that's gonna stay, yeah.
Oh, that's the only thing, it's gonna
It's just like
stay.
a mechanical.
Yeah, it's-
It's gonna be updated with, even like the buttons and everything are not really replaceable in that car, because that manufacturer's out of business.
Yeah, he said it looks pretty nice, but it's really old.
It's wood, it looks
It's like the window dressing looks good, but behind the scenes, it definitely needs to be kind of flooded, I guess you'd say. But the car is still in good shape. And that's what they said, even on the keypad, even those buttons are really old and not replaceable. Although it looks pretty nice.
Obviously, it's still safe to use, but we've
Oh,
got-
yeah,
It's a high priority. though.
Because they do maintenance on it, routinely.
Every month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's,
So is the problem that something could become non-functional, not that there's a safety issue, but that the elevator will become non-functional, which becomes an issue for people moving about the building, and then we have no means of getting it back and running because we can't find the old outdated parts.
And we have to pay for it then anyways.
Yes, yes.
So it's a high priority.
It's not the kind of elevator that could catastrophically fall. It doesn't work that way. You have, Doug just said it's a piston that pushes the elevator up and lowers it from below. So it's not like it's dangling by a wire like you see in an old movie of an elevator collapsing. But actually, I've probably used these elevators more than any of you. And so I'm like hearing, Mr. Wick was kind enough to provide me with an elevator key. At Parkdale, all I have to do is push the button. And there are two elevators at Parkdale, and I push the button, and the elevator opens, and I get in, and I go up, and it comes down, and it works very nicely. But in this building, if you happen to have a handicapping condition that makes it difficult for you to use the stairs, you can't use the elevator because you need a key to do it. So I would strongly suggest that we investigate, since we're upgrading this elevator, the possibility of making it available to people who actually need it, as opposed to those who have to go running around trying to find a key.
Yeah. Well, the same together. Good point, Mr. Brunson.
Do you know, John, if the new one is supposed to have a key or if it's supposed to be, do you know if the new one?
I think we could probably work on that. The key, we could probably make this work without a key. I don't see why we couldn't, because the key just basically calls it. I'm sure that could be changed now. I think it's something that was a preference because it's.
Well, it has a keypad on it, so there's a code, you can program a code in. So I presume if you can program a code in, you can also program no code, just press a button and it would open. But the concern here in this building, when it was first built, was that they felt that students of this age would play around with the elevator, they decide. But I grew up in the city of New York, and where there were hundreds and thousands of buildings with elevators. And young children, sure, they may go in an elevator the first time they've ever seen one and press the buttons and watch it go up and down and ride it. But it's the most boring ride imaginable. It goes slow. They'll do it once and then they'll never do it again. So I think the concern that somehow or another they're going to vandalize or overuse the elevator is unnecessary. And And obviously at Parkdale, it's never been such a problem with fourth graders, they're using, when they need to, using the elevator.
So going on to high school, I'm sorry.
With the toilet rooms, did we not do renovations on the second, third floor bathrooms? Okay, we haven't done those at all.
No.
We were going to, but then. it
Okay,
just-
that's what I was trying to,
Yep.
because I was just thinking,
Did we do
And then-
fixtures or something? Seemed like we did something though.
Well, there are new bathrooms
Right.
on every level.
right,
So all three levels have brand new bathrooms. But there are also bathrooms on each of the three levels that have never been touched since the '70s.
so how many bathrooms, I just am trying to remember, how many bathrooms, so we have renovations to second and third floor restrooms, how many restrooms are we talking about? On the second
I
floor,
believe
are
10.
we renovated?
10,
Does that include the first floor, Matt?
yes.
Okay, because we're adding the first floor too, because they have not been done.
Oh, the ones on.
And then the bigger-
ones that have the whole.
Right.
Yes, 4 on the second floor, 4 on the third floor, and then 2 on the first floor. If I'm counting correctly, that's right.
And there's a huge difference between the quality of the ones that have been done and the ones that have not been done. And, you know, it's just, this is one, frankly, we did nothing else. This one has to be done. I feel the same way about that 181 classroom that's down there in the west wing. You know, it's, that room has never been touched. So it's, you know, we've done some internal work in there, you know, to paint it to try to keep it up nicely, but it's never had the total renovation that this room has had and so many other rooms in this building have. That's why the list for middle school is as long as it is.
Yeah.
Because the middle school in the last two large projects only received a small portion of each project. So with the high school, we spent a tremendous amount of money at the high school and at Parkdale to try to bring every space in both those buildings up to date. But that never happened in this building. So there's about a third of this building that dates back to the '70s and that still needs to be attended to. And that's why the list for the middle school is longer than that.
Okay, thanks.
So high school, we have tennis courts. And that is the replacement of the courts and the addition of 2 more courts in the current location that it is, and fencing around it with drainage and a sub-base. That does not include lighting. As far as replacement, it's built on originally a pond, where the tennis courts are. So the plan would be to dig down 3 to 4 feet to try to make it so there's not such a drainage issue that continuously is happening. Also to cut back some of the trees and then to put higher fencing to prevent some of the leaves and the debris from the trees coming onto the tennis courts that have been causing an issue. So that is the tennis courts at the high school.
Do you know, when they talk about replacing the tennis courts, are they talking about replacing it with the same material that they've used now, which I believe is concrete, is that right? What are
I
they,
think.
They're looking at different options. You know, I think right now, the only thing that prevails here is replacement of the courts. They're looking into, they have a subcommittee looking into several different possibilities of how you would do that, where you would put the new courts, and how they would be constructed. So that's up for grabs.
and what's the discussion for adding 2 more? You have 5 right now.
6.
We have 6, which when you play a match, you have.
Yeah, so Bill, you want to jump in?
I'm just curious, because the team isn't that big, I guess I'm just trying to understand, you know, having had kids that play tennis.
Yeah, the teams actually have grown.
Pardon me?
The teams actually have grown. So the idea is, and especially now with this more of a team approach to tennis, is getting more kids involved and playing. Without lights, you have limited amount of time to get those matches in. So in some matches, I know the girls' team was even substantially bigger than a boys' team. This fall, it's just getting more kids on the court and participating and playing. I think that's the driving force behind that.
make it be less about the starters and more about the entire team getting playing time?
It is a shift, I mean, with this introduction of to the team approach. It's taking what was traditionally an individual sport and making it more of a team sport. It's attracting, and hopefully will continue to attract more players. So that again, a little removed from it, but that I think is initially what I've heard is the rationale behind it. And you're seeing when you travel to other venues now, they really give setups where a lot of them are at least like 4 and 4, back to back with walkways in the middle for better viewing. That's the trend in tennis right now. You'll see it at Lancaster, you see it at Orchard Park. Trying to think who else just put in new courts that people were raving about. Remember?
I think it's Williamsville, maybe.
Maybe the Williamsville.
But the current suggestion that we have here does not include the alleyway between them, just because of where it is.
This right now, the proposal is to add them just in that line, continue the line, is that what the, like to build it up? I'm just trying to understand. where
It's gonna
the
be,
course-
positioned, actually, okay, so there's a number of options, and one of the options is to keep it where it is. And to fit 8 courts, they would actually be offset, so it wouldn't be a pattern of like 8 in a row or 4 and 4, because the space doesn't allow it. But then we talk more about how do we look down the road and look at all of our fields, where do we place the tennis court in relationship to those other fields? So maybe it'll be next to the parking lot where the softball diamond is, so maybe it'll be all into the area that's beyond the ball diamond, the hardball diamond, that's behind the building. So that's what they're, so it all depends on where it goes. And part of it has to do with the water too, so there's like the wetlands in the back, which makes that area near the softball field pretty damp. And so that's what they're trying to figure out. So if we're gonna keep it where it is in order to remove the water issue, we're gonna have to go down about 3 or 4 feet, lots of rock, to make sure that it doesn't happen again with what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, because I just, if you continue to use the same material, which I think is not great, you have cracks on those courts forever. And the cost, I mean,
I
it
think
really
the
has to
drainage is what's going to correct that. So they may use the same surface material, but they're going to put in, this much more than that. Make sure that the water is not an issue.
Yeah, because you just wouldn't want to spend all of that money and then 2 years later, we're going to have this crack. So that's why I was curious what material they were going to choose to do it.
Yeah,
They're
I
gonna
don't-
change up, I mean.
Do you know I don't know, Dan, they didn't really speak
They
directly.
didn't say anything about the
Yeah,
material.
they didn't speak directly to that, but we can ask.
No, they were more concerned as to where they'd be located and the effect of the surroundings and the water table on their longevity. But you're right, I think there may be some more flexible material, but a modern material that
It's even more
How about-
expensive
how
though.
about grass?
It's more expensive than,
You're welcome.
it's more expensive than the
Yeah,
concrete. You know, when you go down to the US Open, when you play the US Open, that material is a totally different type of material than we have here. So,
So
And-
that's all to be investigated.
Yeah.
And, of course, the cost is.
And the only other thing I would say is if we end up doing this, and it is going to be quite costly potentially, the thought of, I would like to know what lights cost, because if you're gonna, the girls' season is particularly short because you don't have lights, and it really limits your ability to play. So that's just another, I just would be curious. They can keep it open, I'm sure that would be pretty.
Again,
Even if you don't do all, you can do 4 courts, you don't have to do all courts for lights, but that would just be something else I'd be curious about as we're figuring out these numbers and looking at.
Well, that's really it, but like you say, looking down the road, and the bigger problem we have is that, which is a big problem we have, is we have very high participation, right? And not only that is that our teams many times are successful, so they're going far into the playoffs. So when they go to sectionals, that means that they're all competing for the same space. So our, like right now, our track team, our tennis team, our lacrosse team, they're all qualifying. So they're trying to get on the same space. So they talked about how do you incorporate like another artificial turf space for practice. So they can practice so they're not back in the parking lot. Because again, it's just, we have so many opportunities for our kids, which is great, but facilities are tapped out in terms of supporting it. And so finding where do we drop the tennis courts in relationship to all those other things is really important.
So was mentioned the subcommittee, there are other potential options for the tennis courts, whether it's tennis court with grass, tennis courts with turf, whether tennis courts with whatever our current base is, asphalt, so there are other things that are currently being researched and looked at. So for right now, what you were given was just the replacement of the courts, the 6 courts, and the adding of 2 more courts. But again, it's complete without the lighting, which really necessarily may not be fair to the fall teams because they won't be able to really utilize it, so, without the lights.
Well, the lighting on the football field was done by a community effort to raise money. And they were able to raise those funds and to install a simple lighting system. And it's the current system is there for the football team with some changes that were done at the time that the turf field was put in. So it's not impossible that a group of community members could initiate a fundraising effort to install lights on the tennis courts, especially if the interest in the team has increased substantially, and there are lots of people involved. I know Steve Decker was involved in that fundraising effort, so he would probably be a good resource for people who might want to find out what they did to make it happen.
Speaking of fundraising, one of the things that was mentioned at 2 meetings ago concerned the library here. Race Reunion Weekend, we talked about the potential of inviting alumni to come into this building or any of the buildings to tour it, and then potentially have some of the ceiling tiles off so they can see it as a way to raise money to help with the library renovation or with the lighting. So that was something we had discussed. It hasn't gone further than the discussion phase, and I think
We have some people planning for a tour.
great.
Yeah, we're planning and having the space open, so we can see.
Great, so renderings are probably pretty far down the road, but those are always helpful if you're asking people to envision where their money is going.
We talked to the architect about that, and he is prepared to do a presentation to the board before the board acts on the scope for this project, which will include visual presentations and renderings of the important spaces. Obviously, they're not going to do a visual presentation on the glycol system, but for the library and for a couple of other key spaces like the tennis courts, it would seem to me that would be an excellent way to communicate with the community what we have in mind.
And the hope was to have the architects and public construction come to the next meeting in July at a reorg meeting and give a presentation with these renderings and go through more of what we have here.
Yeah.
So and finishing up with the high school, replacement of the front parking lot and loop. Again, the PA and clocks, and that would be full clocks, PA system, and the CO detection safety system. And security cameras, and the glycol we already discussed. So these are the ones that we have potentially put on our list. There are others, but again, it all boils down to what we want to do as far as the money. Do we want to make it so there's zero impact on the taxpayers? Do we want to do 2 votes where we have Proposition 1 for 1 through 10 and Proposition 2 for something to do, say, the tennis courts? So there's different things that are being kicked around as far as how to vote come December. But the plan still is to get this to the public with a vote in December. SED right now is 10 to 12 weeks in review, and they're finding that the time is increasing. So again, it's going to take quite a while before any of these starts.
The goal is to go to bid in the spring. Right. Yep. Oh, can I ask a question about the front loop and
Can I just throw this out first? Yeah, just so you're right, the goal is that the board is completed with this process to move it forward by August.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a really
Right, because it
important
has-
thing. It's a really important target if we're gonna make it in December.
Right, it has to go to FCD.
To have like the numbers in front of us
Yeah.
and have all this.
Yes.
So how
So the project's to be done and an estimate of the cost for
Yes.
So we have one more meeting, so by the August meeting,
Right, so
so
we
we
have,
put
have
another
two
meeting
and just, so the next meeting we'll be discussing this again.
Yes, with the architects and the Buffalo construction
And
here.
with the numbers.
Right, and that we said we're more than likely going to have another meeting in the beginning of August
Right.
to further discuss this.
So,
the numbers.
we'll be looking at our full calendar for the year at the reorg meeting, right, of our board meetings. Could everyone please bring your calendar, your availability, and your plan, know that we're gonna be looking at our usual schedule, and we have to make sure that works for everybody, but also be prepared to have options for a second meeting in July.
And a second night meeting, we thought that if we did a morning meeting where not everyone would be able to come to see the presentation or be involved in the meeting, it really should be a night meeting, so anyone in the community could go.
Just as one final comment, I think it's important, Terry mentioned it, but I would reiterate that this list is not all inclusive. There certainly are lots more things at Parkdale and lots more things at the high school, and frankly in this building, that would benefit from a capital project. But we had to, as a committee, boil it down to things that we thought were affordable with the priorities of the district in mind. And so it was a big group of people looking at this, and the result is this list, which we think is approximately what can be afforded. And as it's been just mentioned, it'll be fine-tuned in the next month or two to see exactly what the level needs to be able to go to the public. So I don't want anyone to think that this short list at Parkdale immediately takes care of everything at Parkdale. We still have all those rooms on the second floor of the old wing at Parkdale that need attention. With the increase in universal pre-K, we may come to a point where Parkdale isn't even big enough to handle enrollment for the school district. So the building projects are continuously being evaluated, and I expect that 5 or 6 years after this one, there'll be another one will come along when we retire a large bit of our debt and we can afford it.
Just to Dan's point, he mentioned Parkdale, there's actually 7 more things that we had listed as potential projects just for the middle school. And for the high school, there's 8 more items that are listed as potential, that we,
But
again,
simply couldn't fit in.
right.
So could I ask first, I wanna go back to the front parking lot and the question. For newer board members and community members, could we have a reminder of who all is on the committee so everyone can be assured that this has been thoroughly vetted? It isn't just the board members who have talked about this, but we have Mr. Wicks and all of the administrators have had opportunity to weigh in from each building.
Yes.
Who are your committee?
So we have our superintendent, we have Joanne George, we have Doug Wicks, we have Nathaniel Quarrell, Matt Brown, Lillian Roberts, Tahani, Chris Caselny, and then from the board members, it's Paul, Dan, and myself. From Young and Wright, it's Jerry, it's 2 other people, Steve,
You've got the architects and then you've got.
and then we've got from Buffalo Construction, we have Steve Deckard and Justin Myers.
Thank you.
So it's a big group that is meeting. We plan on meeting then, like at the next 3 weeks continuously, at least once a month.
I think that when we present it to the community, it's been helpful if we show the broader need and wish list and then show that it has been reduced to what is necessary, affordable, possible right now. I think it's helpful. and also sort of like our ongoing priority list for staffing and classroom needs. Here's what we're looking at overall, this is what we're tackling at this point. Could we possibly see that, or,
Well, we have the list.
so let's.
You know,
let's
it's,
look at the list.
it's, the only problem when you give a much larger list is that people are gonna say, well, why did you do this one rather than that one?
Maybe we go for the details on these. This is why the elevator, this is why the tennis courts, this is what the library needs to do. And then here are the other things on the ongoing list that we have decided we cannot afford at this time, but they're still on the list. We just did the 5-year condition survey.
Yeah.
That would be part of
It's
the.
easy to do, it's still there,
It's this
yeah,
right
I mean,
here.
we all have, those of us on the committee have it, we know what those other items were, and I'm sure it was very difficult for the administrators to scratch their heads and say, well, we're gonna have to put this one off, and maybe we can get this one done. Not hard, not easy to prioritize.
One of the major focuses for this was the middle school, because we've done it in stages, and there's a piece left that needs to be completed. So we're gonna try to complete this building, and that's what a lot of this is on the second sheet. That's why the majority of it is focused on the middle school, is to complete those. They'll get all the levels, refurbished. We've been doing it like second and third floor. Now we need to complete the first floor. There's still some things up in the air that we might not be able to get to on the first, but doing our best.
Thank you. And I'm not saying that the board should weigh in on each individual piece. I just think we owe it to the community to communicate the bigger picture.
Well, and those other things are still hanging fire. They'll be there 3, 4, 5 years from now when the next big debt is retired, or the next big bond issue is retired, and when it becomes affordable. That's why this is affordable now, it's because we're retiring a bond.
Front parking lot and it says replacement, are we redoing or is this repaving? Are we restructuring the way it works or just repaving it?
Just repaving.
Okay, thank you, that's what I wanted to ask.
Not restructuring.
Other, yes, Mr. Cassidy?
Thanks.
Thanks.
So thinking back to the last time we voted on one, it was May of 2016. I recall sitting out in the audience and hearing about how certain items in the project were eligible for aid or funding. And I'm just wondering at what point in time we'll know that about this list of items, which ones fall into that, which ones don't, and because it seems like that's an important piece to the puzzle.
Yep. Well, that's a good one to put right to the architects when they do the presentation, because they'll know exactly the answer to your question.
I actually have the email out to Rick Yancey, our financial consultant, and I saw him at the conference, and he said that's the first thing he started to work on when he got back from the conference, is answering those questions. Our maximum cost allowance at each building, on what it would look like if you add money to the capital reserve, what it would look like if we wanted to increase taxes 1% to cover this project. He's running through all different scenarios, which ties into the building aid.
Thank you.
Do we think that it'll be possible that we have that for the reorg meeting?
I hope so.
Okay.
I hope
We'll
so.
cross our fingers.
I would think so.
So before the reorg meeting, does the board want the same papers that we got that gives the additional considerations for each building? Would you like a copy of that?
I mean, I don't necessarily need them if this is what the committee has decided is what we're gonna focus on. I would go with that, I just would have questions about, the different.
Okay.
But that.
Well, Arbor suggested that it would be helpful to everyone in the community to understand what the full scope is, so I don't see anything wrong with having any of those working papers that we have available for people to look at.
I know that there's been an awful lot going on, and this is not the large scale project of the last one, but more presentations that the audience, that the community can digest, the better. That list isn't going to be it, it's going to be a bulleted presentation, and then there might be the list at the end, right? It's the budget presentation that says, here's what we're adding this year, here's the stuff that's still on the list. That's what I would want as a
Sure,
community
well, then
member.
we should provide that, next.
And I think what that helps to do is dispel any perception that we're just spending money for the sake of spending money.
Right, yes. This is how much we need to do, here's what we can actually manage right now. Right, we have to work through the decision-making process publicly. And I very much value the committee work. It's incredible, and you're taking all of the heavy lifting off of the board, which is fantastic. We don't need to be in the weeds, but we certainly need to talk through it and give the community the opportunity to understand how we've gotten there.
Well, and frankly, it's the board, the scope for this project is the board's decision. The board has to vote on it. So, if you folks see something on that list that didn't make it to what the committee thinks is important, speak up. Because it's not, none of this is final. That big word draft on there just means it's still a work in progress. So when you see this other list, and you think there's something that's more important than something that's on this list, speak up and we can discuss it as a board and come to some conclusion.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, there's still room for adjustment. And a lot of it depends on what the financials come back in. So if the financials come back in our advantage, well, maybe we'll look back and say, okay, what else is on the list that we'd like to pull off? If they go the other direction, then we say, okay, how do we have to adjust this in the opposite direction? And then what we talked about on the committee is maybe there's an option. Option one is all I was saying about, here it is, it's with the money that we have, resources we want to use from the capital reserve, this is what we can get. If we want to do these things as well, then we would need, this would be 1% of all the average making it. And so there might be a couple of options, so that the board has a choice. And so, so it definitely is still a work in progress. We're really close. I think we're getting very close. And once Mr. Gansey provides that information, that will really help us then to type it up.
Are there items in the building condition survey that maybe are listed in year 1 through 5 that we should take care of that didn't make the draft list tonight? Or do we have those items covered?
Yes.
Yes, because, when they do the building condition survey, they walk around and they look at everything. They look deeply at it and if something looks like it's not quite right, they'll make it a high priority. They'll say this is the number one thing. But it may not be a high priority to the district. The district may say, we don't care about that particular item because we don't use it, or it has no effect. It's not a safety issue, it's not an instructional issue. So the architects may have said, well, that space is a problem. But we may say that it's not something we want to do.
Unlike say, for instance, on like the mechanicals, so when they talk about the wiring of the fire system, that obviously has to be, and same thing, like even the tennis courts, because of the shape that they're in, it's, we don't want it to become unsafe and unusable. So, we really have to attend to the tennis courts. So those are some safety issues around those particular things, right? And so, but then there's things that they think are a priority, but like as Dan was saying, aren't critical to our operations, then we can kind of say, okay, we know that it should be done, but maybe we have time to look at the next project for that to be done. Unlike, maybe it's like, could be some, like again, usually the mechanicals, like how long do we have on a particular boiler or something like that? They may say this boiler has to be replaced, but these boilers are okay. That kind of thing.
Yeah, just kind of follow up with a question I had. Talk about the needs and wants and the cost of the taxpayers, and all those are important things. But historically, why this whole process, we have to do it. It's not even about we want to do it or just feel like doing it or whatever. If we want to get building aid, we need to go through this 5-year process. And we need to do that. We need to follow the steps that the state says we have to do. They don't want any more emergency projects. It used to be back in the day, when I first started out in this business, you could do an emergency project if something broke. They want no part of that now. They want to be able to manage their building aid district by district. So my point is, if I have a point, my point is certainly the effect on the tax levy is very important. But doing this the right way, guaranteeing a building aid, and guaranteeing is something that's on their 5-year plan, we don't include, and it breaks within a 5-year period, they're not gonna aid an emergency project because those call for our attention. So, as we go through the process, I think it's important for the public to know that we're required to do this. It's not just something we do, to make something better. We need to do a capital improvement project, and you wanna guarantee the building aid.
Like the roof is a good example. Usually they're like around 20 years, well, we're already, he'll say by the time we're done, it'll be approaching 30 years.
Yeah.
So the roof has been okay, but again, you're taking a little bit of risk. Now it's been in good shape, and it was evaluated the last time that we were replacing roofs, and they said that it still has life in it, so we let it roll. But again, it's getting to a point now where it still looks pretty decent because they're saying that there's this new system that they can use, as Mr. was talking about, where if the inner insulation isn't impacted, then they can use a different finish on it to maintain it, and it's less expensive. Or if it is impacted, then it has to be a complete tear off. So again, that's going to impact once they make that determination.
Yeah.
Is it going to be X or is it going to be Y, which is always a lot.
Or is it now or is it later?
Yeah, no,
Gamble. It's,
So that 97 roof, that's another one that has to be taken care of.
Yeah.
One way or the other.
Yeah.
We don't have a choice.
In a presentation to the community, in future PowerPoint, could we flag the items that came up in the building condition survey and maybe start off with why we do this?
Yeah, why we do
Yes.
it.
Yes,
Why
obviously
it's
you
a
need to take
process.
care of your building, but also New York State says, hey, you better take care of your building.
Better do it.
Well, and I think it wouldn't hurt for the administration, Doug and anyone else from the staff who thinks they have a good input for it, take a second look at that list that you're talking about, the 5-year evaluation, and ask the question that you just asked. It's been asked once already,
Yeah.
but ask it again and say, is there something on here that could potentially turn out to be an emergency project 2 years from now that maybe we should put in here instead of something else that's on this list? So it comes down to this whole concept of looking at the totality of the needs and what works its way up to being affordable for this particular project, which is a relatively small project. So I don't think it would hurt to look at it one more time. What do you think?
I think that's actually smart. So I have the middle school's building condition survey in front of me. It's 7 pages, and we did everything that was on their list, keeping in mind they have a line titled remaining useful life. It goes anywhere from 1 year minus plus or minus to 5 years plus or minus. Just the middle school alone on our building condition survey is $12,730,000. That's just for the middle school. So I mean, yeah, I think that's a great idea to go back through each one of these buildings.
And just look and see if there's something that we left off, that's like, I mean, it's always going to be a risk.
Right.
When you have a limited amount of money to spend on maintenance and on renovations, to place that money in the right place. But I think it would be a mistake to just take that list and take all the number ones and do those, because they only have less than a year of life left somehow. You wouldn't get anything to improve the educational program. You would, a building project should address safety issues, educational issues, and preservation of the facilities that the taxpayers pay for. So I'm afraid if you only go and choose all the things that have been identified as about to wear out, that you'll never get to the safety issues or the educational issues. And especially in a project that's going to be somewhere in the $15 million range.
Okay.
Our next meeting with the capital facility is supposed to be the last week of June. So before we meet at our reorg meeting, we can make sure that you have a copy of the whole potential scope, not just the ones that we discussed tonight. And then we can ask them we can go through either then or beforehand and ask them to have us go through the building condition survey and see if there's anything on there.
Well, let's send that out again to the board. They received it, but you can send it out electronically.
Yeah, that's a
And
great
any
idea.
board member who wants to can look through there and say, oh, what about this item? That's fine. That's why this says draft.
So to Joe's point, is that's very important, the ability piece of it. Making sure we're getting as much of that, what is our aid ratio, 60%, 61%?
It's one of the very few ways that we as a school board can control the amount of state aid we receive.
Yeah,
We can't boost up the foundation aid, that's up to the state. We can't, but if we spend a dollar on preserving the facilities and improving the educational program as a result, we increase the amount of money that we receive by 62 cents. So and that's substantial for a district like ours, which has limited resources from the state. Almost everything we do is paid for locally. But this is one thing that the state kicks in on extra that you can't get on most other endeavors. So building projects are essential.
which you outlined the building project should be, the classroom, the students, all those things you listed, the safety. I agree with all those. And when I was talking about making sure that we're picking up the items that need to be addressed, at least in the first couple of years, I'd be more interested in adding those on, not just,
That's another option.
I'm more interested in that. I value capital projects. We need to do them. I think the price tag is important. I'm not downplaying that. When that starts driving it, sometimes I don't think you make the best decisions. I think making the best decisions, solid recommendations to the public. This is why we're doing it. And it's aidable at 61%. I think we just need to fight for that as hard as we can, understanding the local share may be impacted.
Well, that's a good point.
Just remind me, two questions. On our last capital project, did we do work on the tennis courts? I know it was, at one point, it was included.
Oh, yeah, we
Okay,
did.
we spent, well, that's what I was gonna say. So we did that, okay.
Well, this is one of the scary things, when you have to redo work that
Right.
was just done 10 years ago.
It's a fraction of what it will cost though to replace them. So we did it just to keep them in.
They got the kind of the
Just resurface.
resurface,
Right,
not
I
rebuild.
know what we did, I guess my point being, if we go with the same material, regardless of where we move those tennis courts, if we still have issues with water, that's my concern. So I just very much wanna have a good understanding from the architects, how they're gonna handle that, so that we don't end up 5 years later with cracks in tennis courts.
Yeah, they had a consultant come out for that specific reason.
And
Yes,
then,
making sure they get it.
Also, I'm just trying to remember, aidable, when we do work on our athletic fields, that is considered.
You have to do work in the buildings
That's-
as well.
that's
If you
my
do work
comment.
in the buildings, then you're allowed to spend a certain amount on other things.
There's a lot to that
If you
question.
just did a
Imagine
field
cost
or-
allowances and stuff like that all
It's like
together.
Joe's question, how do you maximize that aid?
Right.
Yeah.
Making sure those ratios are in the right order, so that we're maximizing the aid.
Hopefully
And
we
we'll be
have,
able to talk about all that,
Yeah.
obviously.
yes. So any other questions? I think the committee and the administrator heard a whole lot from us. We'll have more information at the reorg meeting. Luckily for everybody, that's later than it was originally scheduled. Anything else on that topic? All right, is there any legislation that comes before the board?
Well, there was lots of good legislation in the last week, related to safety, that the governor signed, and hopefully, the result will be fewer, incidents of gun violence in our state.
Your help. Item 11, is there anyone, a board member who wishes to remove a consensus item? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the consensus items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Flowers. Seconded by Mrs. O'Weiler. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Item 12, items requiring board action. Item A, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education authorize the change of date of the district reorganizational meeting from Wednesday, July 6th, 2022 to Wednesday, July 13th, 2022. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Cassidy,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Danu. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, carried 7-0. Item B, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve for a second reading the policies, visitors to the school, operation of motor-driven vehicles on district property, code of conduct, prohibition of weapons on school grounds, threats of violence in school, non-discrimination and anti-harassment in the district, non-resident student enrollment, loss or destruction of district property or resources, and equal educational opportunities. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. O'Leary, seconded by Mrs. Danu. Discussion?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see, is this the one? The non-resident student enrollment. I just had a question on foster placements. They, so there'll be a court order or something, to move into
That's
the district. Doesn't have to be included in our policy or anything. I didn't see it was in the policy.
No,
And
that's,
we would just bill them back
There's,
at the
we
rate.
bill back the
Right.
district of origin.
right, and there's something in the policy called any other legal reason, and then that follows that.
Oh, that
So
comes
same
under
with
that.
homeless, students, displaced students, foster students, there are military, students. There's a number of things that fall under that,
Incarcerated.
any other legal reason, and that all fits there.
Thank you, Ms. Flowers. Other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Item C, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve for a first reading the following policies: student acceptable use policy, student use of personal technology, fixed asset inventories, accounting, and tracking. May I have a motion? So moved. Moved by Ms. Solera,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Cassidy. Discussion?
Was there an opportunity to talk to our internal auditor about the policy on fixed asset inventories? I know that's one of the things he's been working on over the years. It's not on his list of stuff for this year, but he has done the fixed asset analysis.
No, I didn't talk to Tom.
Well, I think it wouldn't hurt to send him a copy of this, just.
I definitely will. This will help us manage with our fixed asset policy. We want to make sure that we are capturing things under our 200 codes as equipment so that we insure them, but we don't necessarily have to depreciate them. So the revisions in this policy is to make that process smoother.
Yeah, and I
But I
have
will
no
send him a
problem
copy.
with it. I just think it would be a good idea to make sure he sees a copy of it.
Are we comfortable moving on with the first
Oh,
reading?
sure.
And
Oh,
okay, just request to forward that to our internal auditor. Thank you, Mr. Brunson. Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Item D, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the retirement separation agreement to Lynn Cornell as detailed in your agenda. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Cassidy.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Flowers. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Item E, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education accept the resignation of Jessica Kwiatkowski effective June 30th, 2022, as detailed in your attachment. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. O'Weiler. Second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Malice. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Item F, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the appointment of Jacqueline Ademi, 1.0 probationary position of speech language pathologist in the tenure area of speech beginning September 1, 2022, as detailed in your agenda. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Malice,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Cassidy. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Item G, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the appointment of Renee Malerski to 1.0 FTE probationary position of school psychologist in the tenure area of school psychologist beginning September 1, 2022, as detailed in your agenda. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Malice, seconded by Mr. Flowers. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Item H, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the successor tentative agreement to the expiring collective bargaining agreement between the district and the East Aurora Civil Service Personnel Association as detailed in your attachment. May I have a motion? Moved by Mrs. Ohlweiler. Second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Malice. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Item I, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the 2022-2025 district technology plan as detailed in your attachment. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Ohlweiler,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Cassidy. Discussion? Thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Item J, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education, sorry?
I just said it's awesome.
It is awesome. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the successor tentative agreement to the expiring collective bargaining agreement between the district and the East Aurora Faculty Association. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Malice. Seconded by Mr. Cassidy. Discussion?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly that.
I'd just like to thank both the Civil Service and the Faculty Association for working with us. I thought it was a really positive process, and we've gotten the two agreements done in time, so really grateful for everybody's work, everybody on our team as well. And also Mr. Maisano, excellent job on the technology. I really appreciate it. It was a lot to take on. As Mr. Ohlweiler said, he's only been here for about 3 months and got a lot done. So.
I'm ready.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. What a wonderful way to begin the summer all the way around. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Happily carried 7-0. Item 13. Please note the reorganizational meeting, as previously stated, is Wednesday, July 13th. We will begin at 6 p.m. with the business meeting with anticipated executive session at 6:10.
I'm doing 5:45.
No, because we have to do the public hearing and get everybody going. So we have 2 public hearings at that meeting.
District-wide safety plan and code of conduct.
Okay, please note, at the reorganizational meeting, which will begin at 6 o'clock, because we need to swear people in, so we can't start early. We have to swear people in at 6 p.m. We anticipate.
President.
All right, we have to elect a president and vice president. Just start all over, clean slate. 6:10, anticipated executive session, we'll have 2 public hearings, one for
District-wide safety.
district-wide safety plan and the second for the code of conduct. All beginning July 13th at 6 p.m. We expect to return from our 1-hour executive session at 7:10 for our business meeting instead of 7 o'clock. Okay? Okay, thank you. Please note upcoming workshops, new board member governance training and accountability training. Please see the district. What?
Yes. I just wanted to add another thing that I saw today. NISBA's law conference is virtual. If anyone wants to attend that, it's I think July 28th, 29th. So we probably just have to let us know what is it NISBA one.
But the Erie County is in
The Erie
person.
County, yeah, Erie County's in person. So in case you couldn't go to one on
Erie County Law Conference is August 3rd with a deadline to sign up by July 15th. And I'm sorry, Ms. Dan, what were the dates for NISBA's Law Conference? 28th, 29th?
Exactly, July, I think July 28th. Okay. And it's 8 to 12. They're just, yeah, 28,
half
8
days.
to 12, yeah. So you have to sign up, I think, by, again, early July.
Okay, through Mrs. Kramer or Mrs.
Right,
Lopper,
right.
correct? Everyone good with that? All right, any other items to come before the board? Thank you very much for a full and productive meeting. Thank you all for sticking it out with us. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Cassidy, seconded by Mr. Flowers. Discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, carried 7-0. Thank you and good night.